Hi, Sophie. I'm working with the Novatech company. They need a hiring process. What are your initial thoughts on a strategy to fix this workflow?
Typically, if there is a hiring process workflow, there is a policy, some sort of standard. My first question to you would be, what is your current process now? Is there any documentation or standard or practice of how the hiring process is handled in your organization? Typically, when organizations respond with, we don't have a current process right now, but this is what we do.
Mhm.
That what you do is technically a process of how you handle your hiring process. Although it might not be documented, right? It's more of like this is what you do when this happens. Those are things that need to be standardized across the organization.
What would be your second question for Novatech?
What is working and what's not working with your current workflow, with your current process. So, in order for me to provide a solution to fix such workflow, right, we need to figure out where applicants need to be at and when, right? Because I feel like the pain point here is applicants are getting lost and information doesn't reach the appropriate process owner, right? So we need to lay out your process from beginning to the end to figure out what are your milestones, which process or steps in your workflow that if it doesn't occur or if it doesn't occur the right way, what will happen to your workflow? Will it break, right? Which in this case, it breaks when applicants are lost. Information does not reach the appropriate supervisor. So, my additional question to you is, what do you hope your solution will look like from the beginning to the very end? What do you hope would be successful metrics in your workflow? From there, we could work together to collab on a workflow and a process that will work best for your team. My advice for client expectations is to set them, document them, and communicate them. Once we have figured out your why for being here, our next step will be to discuss the what. What do you want? What do you want and hope out of this workflow build? Who are the process owners and when does their process start and or end? Is it continuous throughout? It has to be a working process, a process where from the beginning to the end, it works and it answers the requirements of a successful workflow. In this case, a HR hiring workflow. Warning signs of a flawed process. This is where the breaks come in. Where does it break? So, for an example, if you keep noticing a consistent pattern of applicants being lost, information not getting to proper process owner, this is broken, right? These are risks that you have to look out for because it does not answer the requirement of your successful workflow. If applicants don't get to process owners, your hiring process is broken, essentially, right? So these are warning signs. At every milestone within your workflow, you want to make sure you are hitting those milestones successfully. So that way you have a solution. How does a candidate should look like at the end of their hiring process? If they look like XYZ, but they show up at the end looking like XY, there is a part in your process or your workflow that broke. A question that most clients like to ask is, Sophia, why do you need my process? Well, as a consultant, if I don't work there, I don't work with you. My job is to consult on best practices of learning your workflow, your day to day. I like to call this the process of me being nosy. And from the information that is given to me, I am able to build your workflow effectively as if I do work with you, right? I'm building something for you that Doesn't matter what day it is. You go in there in your ClickUp workspace on the Monday, a Thursday, a Friday, right? It works at any given time, right? Because we have a working workflow for your hiring process for your organization. The first thing we need to do here is set your organization's preferred notification settings. I would also set necessary stages where and who must be notified. No one likes unnecessary notifications. Last, make effective notifications. Ask yourself, who needs to know, when they need to know, do they need to know? Emphasis on the last one. Do you really need to know this when this happens? If process owners can sit there and say, yes, I do need to know that when this happens because of A, B, and C, great. That answers that requirement. They do need to know.
How can we keep documents from being lost?
What does the documentation, what does that package look like before it gets delivered to the proper supervisor, right? You're answering the what and the who here, right? What is all included in there? Who does it need to go to and how? One good strategy in ClickUp for this is if your organization wants to use ClickUp Docs for resumes, or it could be a linked document to share it with a specific supervisor. We can ensure proper delivery based on statuses, right? We can say that if applicant A is ready for a resume review, right, the status would be resume review ready. We can combo it with an automation to automatically notify said supervisor. We can also include a comment to alert the supervisor that a resume is ready for their review. This way, we have the what, the resume, the who, the supervisor, and the how. The delivery is in the how, right, where we use automations triggered by the status and an additional layer, more like a safety net here, that the supervisor is also alerted to review the resume. Automations are a huge part of understanding your process and ensuring that a build is created for you that works from the beginning to the end. With those automations, we dig into the root of it all, right? Who, what, where. When we have an automation in place, who does it impact? What is it impacted and why? Where does it need to go? You need to place your form link where it's needed, right? And where it would be easier for your audience, in this case, your candidates, to fill it out. This can be on your LinkedIn page. This could be on your website. This can be on your SharePoint, right? Anywhere where a candidate can come to find out more information about a job posting, that is where your form link needs to be placed. You want your form to be straight to the point, asking for requirements and asking for metrics that will lead to the success of a candidate from the beginning to the end of your hiring process.
How can some of the candidate information be shared while other information is kept private?
This question gets asked a lot pertaining to sharing and permissions. I would need to understand the building of specific views based on the who needs to see certain data attributes, what are those data attributes and why? Is there a reason why for the role that they hold in your company that they need to see specific custom fields? Understanding that data of who, what, and why will then lead to another layer of sharing and permissions of, well, if they need to see that, do they need to comment? What is the action required here? Do we want them to only view? Do we want them to respond? Do we want them just to see data as a whole for references and not do anything further? A successful workflow build relies heavily on it being tested and feedback is being gathered by the client. This is a continuous process where a ClickUp consultant and the client is able to go back and forth on adjustments needed. Were all the pain points mentioned in the beginning, were they answered? Are you meeting your requirement for a hiring process? Growing with ClickUp is going to take a lot of patience, a lot of learning, and most importantly, continuous defining and redefining your processes. You cannot work within ClickUp and only change your process and not change your ClickUp instance. Both have to be done at the same time. A few best practices here would be, as a change occurs or as a need for change occurs, you want to document any changes to your processes. Once documented, you now want to implement them into ClickUp. When you are implementing something new in ClickUp, you want to build it properly based off the changes, and you want to continuously test it. As you are going through testing the changes to your process in ClickUp, you want to share this with your subject matter experts and gather feedback. Continuously gather that feedback. Then you'll go back to your ClickUp instance, make updates, and adjust as needed. All right, thank you so much.